Hi. So today we're going to change the raw water impeller on a Mercruiser 2006 Bravo 3. It's a Mercruiser 5.0. Because this motor has the Gen 3 cool fuel module, you really can't get to the impeller in the back of this pump. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it all apart to get the pump out. So first I'm going to start with, this is the adjuster right here for the serpentine belt. I'm going to loosen that up, take the serpentine belt off. Then there is a hose right behind here. I'm going to take this hose off. I'm going to pull this pulley off. And then I'm going to loosen the screws here on the Gen 3 cool fuel just to kind of move that out of the way. There are two hoses underneath, and I'll show that a little bit later on the back side of the pump. I'm going to disconnect those hoses. And then there are bolts for the pump, and I'm going to pull the pump right out. So once I do that, get back on. Okay, so as you can see, the serpentine belt is removed. All you do to remove the serpentine belt is you take a couple of wrenches, and this is the one that, whoops, sorry about that. This is the one that adjusts it. As you know, this goes up and down. You loosen this nut and you crank down, and that loosens the serpentine belt. You can take that right off. And then the pulley that was over here, I've removed it. As you can see it, here it is, pulley nuts. So the next step that I'm going to do is I am going to remove this bracket, and I'm also going to remove this hose right here. Once that hose is removed, I got a couple hoses in the back that I'll pull out. Okay, so as you can see, I have removed the bolts, the bracket that goes in here. There's a bracket that fits over that holds the pulley that's here. So I move the bracket, and this is the pump, and it loosens that up also. I removed this hose from here. This is just to get it out of the way. And then also on the side of the pump, you have these two little plugs here. You should take those off. Just drain as much water out of the pump so that you don't make a mess. The next thing that I'm going to do is, I'm not sure if you can see here or not, but down on the back of the pump, I'll show you when I pull the pump out. There are two hoses. I'm going to disconnect those two hoses. Once those two hoses are gone, then I can pull the pump out. On this particular boat, the top one is red and the bottom one is black. Just make sure on your boat, if they're not identified, that you know which one is the top and the bottom, because one is your intake and one is your out. So you want to make sure you get that right. See you in a bit. Okay, so on this particular motor, when I did my port motor, I had no problem. I'm sorry, my starboard motor, I had no problem. On the port motor, I couldn't get this bracket out. As you can see, it's got a little tab here, and it's hitting my Gen 3 cool fuel. I unbolted it, but I couldn't move it out of the way. There are some bolts that are in the back that are a real pain in the butt to get out. So you got a bolt here, you got a bolt in the back here, and a bolt in the back here. It's a 10mm bolt. I loosened that up so that I could then pull the pump out after struggling with this red hose. This red hose is in there pretty good, but here we go. I've got the pump out, and next step will be to take it apart and pull out the impeller. Okay, so 10mm bolts. Take this one, this one, and once I unscrew those, the whole this whole assembly here will just come right off, and then you'll see the impeller. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the cover off, and looking down in here, this impeller is definitely pretty short. This O-ring looks pretty good. I'm going to leave this O-ring. I bought a new one, but it looks really good. They're a real pain in the ass to hold in place. Sometimes you can put maybe a little bit of silicone or something to kind of hold it. But O-ring looks pretty good on this, so I'm going to kind of leave it in place. I'm going to pull this impeller out and put another one in a few minutes. One thing that you should note before you pull it out is which way the paddles turn, right? Because this turns in a counterclockwise direction. When I'm looking at it this way, you want to make sure that you've got them in the right direction. If you don't, not that big of a deal, because when the motor starts, they'll flip over in the right direction. But depending on what type of impeller you put in, you could put undue stress on the little paddles here and maybe do some damage to it. So if you look at it, like on this one, it leans over to the right, so we'll keep that in mind when we put the new one in. So this is the impeller out. As you can see, it's pretty chewed up. This impeller has been on here for 5 boating seasons, and it's long overdue. I should have done it quite a while ago. So I'll make sure that this is going to be part of my 2-year PMs and change this every couple of years. But you know, the way to get it out is just kind of grab in between here with a pair of needle nose and twist the whole housing, and then kind of pull it out. It's a little bitch to get out, but a little bit of work, you can get it done. Okay, so the impeller that I'm gonna put in is Globe Marine Products Run Dry Impeller. So I'm gonna take this out. This is a what's called a double flat. You see the 2 flats here on both sides of the shaft. This is really, it can be pretty tricky to put in. Sometimes they tell you to use a little bit of like vegetable oil around the panels and twist it in. When I did the other motor, I didn't use anything. I was just able to kind of twist around and push and shove, and I was able to get it in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again with this one. Okay, so now you see the impeller is in. I just, you know, pushed it to it, turned it counterclockwise, kept pushing until I felt that it was caught in the 2 flats. Once it was caught in the 2 flats, I kind of twisted the housing and made sure that you know, the impeller went in nice and smooth. You got to watch down inside the pockets here so the impeller doesn't get caught and you cut it. So just kind of reach your finger inside and push it or turn the whole housing around. So now that that's done, I'm going to actually scrape this up a little bit, clean this up. I should have done that beforehand, but I'm going to do that now and then put the cover back on. Okay, one of the other things that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my grinder and I'm going to grind this tab back a little bit. Make it a little bit easier to get in. I'd rather put the housing onto the pump and slide it in rather than try to screw the housing in. There's just not a whole lot of room in there. So I'm going to go ahead and grind this a little bit. I looked inside when I had it in place, and it really doesn't look like this serves a purpose. I'm not sure why it's like that, but I'm going to go ahead and grind that back a little bit. So as you can see, I ground the tab a little bit right here. I ground that back, so this thing should, nice and easy, slide right into here. Okay, so before I put the pump in, I want to put these little plugs back in, screw these things back in. Make sure that the O-rings are on there, otherwise than that you'll probably have a leak. I just put them in now, that way it's easier. Don't have to worry too much about it or forget them. Good, now I'll put the pump in. So before I put the pump in, I want to do a couple of things. You see I've got this hose here and this hose. I took the clamp was orientated in this manner, and it was very hard to get at. So I'm going to rotate it like so, and that way I can come in from this side of the motor. It'll be a heck of a lot easier. And I'm just going to take the pump now. I'm going to slide it. It goes onto this, through this bolt, goes in. I'll hook up the hoses, and then I'll be back. Okay, so the pump is back in place. On this motor, I had to disconnect this plug down in here. Okay, so make sure that, see it right there. Make sure that you put that back in. It connects to, I don't know, maybe a sensor on the back of the harmonic balancer. So make sure you connect that. I didn't have to on the other motor, on my starboard motor, but on this motor I had to. So the pump is back in place. The 2 hoses in the back are all connected. Grinding that little tab that I ground made this thing slide in really nice and slick. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bolt this all back on with the bracket, and the pulley. And actually, before I do that, I'll put this hose back in place, screw that in, and I should pretty much almost be done. Okay, so if you did like I did and you took this bracket and you swung it out of the way, I swung it up completely out of the way. When I put this mounting bracket on, I couldn't swing this arm down, so I had to redo it again. I had to take it out and just put this bracket back in place. And so now I'm going to put the bolt in. It's pretty hard to do this one-handed while I'm holding the camera. But let me see if I can get hold on, put the camera down here. Okay. So now I've got the bolt in place. I will slide the pulley on, hold it back, put the pulley on, and then I'll tighten this up. And once that's all tight, I'll put the serpentine belt back on, and then I'll use this. This is my tensioner. I'll crank this up and tighten it up till I get the right tension, and then I'll lock the pulley in place. Okay, so there it is, done deal. Everything's all on. So now I'll just put the muffs on it, run it for a little while, make sure I got no leaks down in here, and hopefully I should be all set for the summer. Hope this was helpful to you. As I said earlier, I haven't seen too many postings on this type of setup, so I figured I'd put something out there to give some folks some directions here. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.